All right. Hi, everyone. We are live in discussion with Shona McAndrew and Lavaughan Jenkins. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. I'm Abigail Ogilvy and I own Abigail Ogilvy Gallery in Boston, Massachusetts. This entire event series was born out of the idea that galleries are meant to bring culture to the world, and this is our way of bringing culture into your homes right now. So it's really exciting you're here, and love that Shona and Lavaughan have made it on with us today. Welcome you too. Hi. To give you a little bit background about these two artists, Shona received her MFA from RISD, Rhode Island School of Design, in 2016 after graduating from Brandeis University with a degree in fine art and psychology. She's both a painter and sculptor, and her artwork focuses on the depiction of the female body in everyday life. And Lavaughan Jenkins received his BFA from Massachusetts College of Art and Design in 2005, and since then has gone on to win many artist awards and grants, most recently the 2019 James and Audrey Foster Prize at the ICA Boston. He's also a painter and sculptor and best known for his three-dimensional oil paintings. So welcome you too. So happy to have you here. Shona, maybe we'll start with you. Where are you? How are you? Who are you?
I'm in Philly in my studio. I'm lucky to have a studio in my home, so I've not been very affected by all this change that's happening right now. And behind me, you have a watercolor that's about halfway done or so. And I am fine and excited to do this. That summarizes it all.
Nice. Hey, Lavaughan.
Good morning. Hi.
Hi. Where are you? Let the audience know.
I am home in my home studio, which I'm pretty pumped that I moved a bunch of stuff back in there before we went to New York, because I'd probably be in trouble because I am not trying to go outside.
I think so every artist with a home studio is feeling really happy about that right now, I think.
Yeah, like even if you, like, production-wise, even if things are that way is different, it's having it at home definitely helps. So when that moment clicks, like for me, I'm such an emotional moment painter that when things are all good, it's great to be able to walk around the corner and get to work, as opposed to having to trek across town or something. So
Totally.
yeah, the living studio is pretty awesome right now. Sorry, everyone that doesn't have that.
It's a good piece of advice. It's the first piece of advice. So here you are today in your studios in Philly and Boston, but think back to when you graduated from RISD and Mass Art respectively. What happens next? I mean, you're an artist, you've just finished that art degree. Was there a mentor? Is there something you did immediately? What was that like?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I feel like what helped me the most by far was looking at my peers. I think in terms of mentors, that would be who I turned to. I looked at what they were doing to consider themselves professional artists. I think it's good to think you're that before you actually are. It kind of sets you in a place where you treat your work with respect and you photograph it well and you put yourself out there in the right way. So someone like my best friend, Danny Farrell, who's here in the panel somewhere, he's someone I look to a lot in terms of how he worked his way through the world and he learned from someone else, and we all just look at one another. I think that's what I started off with when I got out of graduate, because you don't really get exact information on how to act as an artist. That doesn't really work. That's how art school is. So you kind of just leave art school with a degree in art and people that you know. And it's just about looking around you and seeing how you want to fit. And we all get to choose what kind of artists we're going to be. And you just look at those who represent, you know, what you're looking for. So that's what I did.
And what about you?
Yeah, well, mine was a little more weird than that. So I started showing my senior year in college, and so I was kind of thrown into the gallery world and wasn't really prepared for it. At least now that I can look back, I wasn't really too prepared for it, because you just kind of you're just making stuff in school. At least that was me. I never really wanted to be an artist. So it's kind of like as I go, learn, and it was a little interesting, but I got to push the reboot button, so that was cool. Kind of restart things, and then kind of like what you were saying is look towards those people that were doing things and kind of figure out a path um, to go without making this like a long dramatic story. I'll keep it
Do
like
you feel like
that.
do you two feel like you have access? I mean, maybe now that there's the Instagram world and stuff, to like artists that you wouldn't have before. Like, do you message with artists who you admire? Do you have phone calls? Is that outdated? I don't know. Maybe it's just DMing on Instagram. Like, is that happening? And is that something you think students should take advantage of?
I feel like I have so many more friends than I genuinely have because I have so many DMs I've never met, and I wouldn't know the sound of their voice, but I've had what feels like hours of conversation that end up being truthful. Like we're very honest with one another. I think that's what Instagram has offered for sure. And I feel like I know so much more about what's going on out there, probably because I'm much more involved in it, but also I get to see it much more. And we're all on Instagram, or most of us are, so it's hard not to know what someone's doing sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like the creepy stalker on Instagram. I message everyone and I open up my messaging to everyone. Everyone's allowed to like shoot me a text. Probably use the DMs more than actual texting. And but I mean, it's played a huge role in where the things that I'm doing today. So it's really awesome to be able to reach out to people, and the fact that they're responding back is really cool as well, because I don't think when I graduated, I would have never imagined that I had access to all these people, or that it was okay to message people and ask questions and things like that. So social media, Instagram especially, was really big for that, that connecting. And now that Facebook and Instagram and they do all this connectivity, it's really helpful, and you have such a vast world to dig into. It's really cool.
If I have to be, I think, Abigail, you're maybe the only one of the few actual relationships I have in the art world that was because I met you in person first. But if I think about it, almost everyone else was through social media. We actually met, and that's how our relationship started. But you're like one of the, I can count on one hand who those people.
I love meeting people, and I'm always like bopping around trying to meet everyone. Yeah, so I think that's something that's an interesting story. We all met at Spring Break Art Show 2019, an art fair in New York. I think it was both of your first art fairs, which was a really cool experience. And you both had kind of breakout shows. I think they were getting talked about a lot. I know Jerry Salt said really exciting things. Are there moments that you can define where like, maybe that was a really high and then a separate thing in the past that like you felt like it was going to have all this momentum, but then was a low? And then like, how did you navigate that? Like, how do you as an artist, like navigate those ups and downs that come with what we do?
Well, the piece that got so much attention in Spring Break, which is a life-size installation of me and my boyfriend lying in bed out of paper mache, is the same piece that a year ago, and a much smaller version of it, I hadn't created the bedroom, but I just had the bodies. And that was in a solo show that I thought would get attention, and it remained between me and my friends. And all it took was a year, and then I put much more thought into it. I put thousands of more hours of work into building 50 plus more objects to go around it. But it was the same sculpture shown twice in pretty much 1 year that got very different reaction. I know I was very disappointed. I wasn't disappointed. I thought the piece was important. It was to me. And so perhaps it was more sadness towards myself of like, oh, well, damn, I guess maybe I was wrong, or maybe I misunderstood the piece, which I don't like to get too excited too fast. So it doesn't happen often. So I had let myself go with this sculpture and assumed people would react to it strongly. But, my commitment to it is what made it persevere and get the attention it did the year later. So perhaps my advice is take a minute, don't value work based on people's reactions to it, and persevere. I think most of what art is perseverance through your own practice, through a concept, through a piece, through time and people's lack of interest in you, whatever thing is blocking you, if you just continue, typically you, at least in my experience, you make it to the other side. And that sculpture did exactly that.
Yeah, totally. And Lavaughan, that sounds like a similar story to your experience, the body of work you showed at the same art fair.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. Um, you're supposed to be proud of the work. No, you should be excited about it, and can't wait to share it with everyone else, with the hopes that they feel the same way, because your idea, like at least for my work, I try to make it. I'm thinking about you and everyone else, and not thinking about you and everyone else when I'm making it. I hope that I have that connectivity with other people, and so when I come up with something, I'm like, oh, this is so good. I can't wait to show everyone. And then you do it, and they're like, yeah, that's cool, you know. And but I think that show that I did with you was 2017,
Yep.
right?
Fall of 2000.
And
Yeah.
and then we did, which, and nothing like sold. Like it was a little heartbreaking.
Lots of writing. We got press about the show, all these cool comments, but not one single piece sold.
Yeah. And so it was like, and it's weird to like try to, I mean, I guess you shouldn't base things on sales or whatever and things like that. But at that time, I was basically living like paycheck to paycheck. And I just put all my money into the show because it's something I just knew was happening, and I was so excited about it. And then I had to go back to work because I didn't have any more money because nothing sold. And so that was a little deflating, but at the same time, it kind of lit a bigger fire underneath me, because I took it upon myself as being like, well, maybe I didn't do enough, or maybe it's not as good as I thought, and I need to rethink some things and really make it, because that's, for me as an artist, I don't like to settle. I think each time I'm in the studio, I'm going to make something better than the last time I was there. And that's my goal. So when spring break happened, I was like, well, we're going to do all new work, and I'm going to make all these pieces, and then I'm going to like prove everyone wrong. Even though the possibilities of that happening isn't very high. Like maybe it's just a dumb idea, and you just keep wasting your money. And when we got to spring break, and things went a little psycho.
In a good way. Let everyone
with their responses and things like that. It was everything that I didn't get in the last show, and we're just like, it was stuff happening left and right, and you're just like, what the hell is going on? But yeah, ideally it's similar to what you were saying. The work, I don't think it's that much different. It's definitely better because I had a second go at it, because I'm growing, and but it's crazy to have work get no response and then get a ton of response when it's basically the same thing. You just don't know, so you just keep plugging, and
but there's almost something nice about it being randomly, the same piece showing twice and getting two different responses. There's some weight lifted off our shoulders in a way, because there's an understanding of like success and attention and whatever you're seeking sometimes doesn't have anything to do with skill or how good you are. It's just who saw it.
Absolutely.
And there is some weight lifted off our shoulders, that, you know, that's the same piece that was shown twice, or the same kind of work, and it's just was shown differently. And so it's not always on us to feel responsible for success or failures, because it isn't something we can control. You just work as hard as you can, so when it happens, everything's ready for you. But you know, you
Yeah,
don't get to dictate
absolutely.
about what you do. And I find
Yeah.
peace in that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like it's preparation for the moment. It's kind of how I look at it now. Um, so when that moment does happen, you know, I'll be ready for it, and I'll have plenty enough work. So you
Exactly.
just keep feeding off of as positive, negative. It's just getting back in there and keep cooking, and sooner or later those seasonings are a hit just right, and it'll taste really good.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think what I admire about both of your approach to that, and it was a really, I mean, mature approach, whether you thought it at the time or not, neither of you said this artwork didn't get the response I wanted, so I'm going to pivot and do something totally different, start from scratch, that's for the wrong reasons. You kept doing your artwork. And I think that's something that, especially artists starting out, it's a really important message that it just takes time. And it, like you said, it just takes the right timing or the right time and place, the right people, all of that kind of perfect storm coming together. It's hard. I mean, it's a really hard thing to have happen. But I think also starting out, people are watching you. So if they've seen the body of work once before, maybe at the time they thought it was really cool, but weren't sure about buying it or telling their friend about it. And then the second time they see it, that's when they say, I love this. I've been thinking about it for 2 years. You just had no idea. And now, you know, this is something I love so much. I want it in my home. So I think there's more
Sure. I
happening.
mean, we're not normal. Our work isn't normal, isn't what everyone else is doing. So sure, it would take, sometimes maybe it does take a little bit more for people to get uh, familiar or comfortable with it, you know. But my thing with changing, I mean, I go back and forth from 3-dimensional and 2-dimensional, and I, I'm looking at whatever it takes to make the work do whatever it needs to do. You know, that's my goal. If the work tells me it needs to be something else, I'm completely open to adjusting. And I think as long as my hands are doing it, it's always going to be my work. So, but I mean, I won't change for someone just because they want something else, you know. But it's purely whatever the work is saying to me. I go from there, and just right now, it just happens to be the 3-dimensional work is where my head is. As much as I try to do 2D work, I keep going back to 3D. So, but I'm excited about that moment where things flip back or they started to merge together. It's going to be fun when all that stuff starts to really communicate with each other. Not that it doesn't now, but I'm really excited for that big moment.
And then I'm curious, like thinking about buying art as a art gallery that's almost 5 years old. I certainly remember our very first collectors at the gallery, whether they know it or not, they mean the world to me. Do you remember who were some of the first people to buy your artwork, and are they really important people in your life still, or are you just remember them?
For me, yes, the first person who ever bought a piece that I can remember, not like my friend's parents bought a painting here and there, but I mean like a real collector. She bought my first little sculpture, and she also just happens to be a fine artist who lives in the same world as me. But yeah, she feels quite important to me. It was a very important and odd moment. It was a little sculpture, and it was my first little sculpture, so I had really bonded with her. She felt like my little baby. So there was also the first time I experienced like creating something that I cared for, and then I guess just dropping it off with someone. That was like a weird moment for me, but a good one, and I care for her deeply. So yes, I do remember. But I think it's specific to the woman that who bought it, and the sculpture, who Alice, the little baby. Maybe it's not just everything.
I don't remember. I don't remember. I mean, it's been so, it's like so many little moments where at least the ones that I think about are the ones that kind of hit like a turning point for me. But those moments, those buyers, those people that collected that work, I remember them, and we still talk, and I always tell people how much it meant at that moment because it led to this other work, or me being able to make rent and keep painting the way that I was painting. Like sometimes those sales or those they hit at certain moments in my life that I really needed it. So it's maybe not so much, some certain paintings mean more to me that people have, and I remember those people, but I remember more so where there was moments that I was like literally not going to be able to make rent or finish work for a show because I was running out of money. And somehow those people came at just the right time where I was almost over it, and they kind of saved me because it gave me the hope and to know that this was possibly meant for me to do, because they literally came on the knocking on the door at the exact moment where I was ready to bolt up the windows and just say, that's it. So those people I'm grateful for. I won't throw their names out there, but they know who they are because we talk all the time. So yeah, but those things, I mean, those are relationships you develop. You don't think they're going to happen. It's just kind of weird to someone to care about what you do as much as you do. Those moments for me.
Totally. And I think, I mean, there's obviously that whole glamorous side of, I mean, we have interns who start working for us and are like, it's all client meetings and openings with alcohol, and that's what they think. And then there's a lot of so much work that goes into what we do. I mean, between the manual labor of moving artwork, coordinating things with our artists, all sorts of things like that, I think that in the art world, it's easy to forget that, especially for artists starting out, they often have other jobs, and many very established artists have full-time jobs at universities and different things like that. So it's an interesting, I don't know, it's an interesting thing to navigate. Have you both, I mean, I know Lavaughan has had some other part-time work and things. Shona, you too?
The year out of graduate school, I was a full-time assistant manager at a museum. We worked like 40+ hour weeks and had to commute an hour and a half.
And then also doing your artwork.
And then literally every day I had off, and after work every day I went to the studio. And I have never made as little work, and I've never been as exhausted. I never felt less like an artist. After the end of that year, I quit my assistant job and then start doggy sitting. I had dogs in my studio. So I had just found a way to continue making art while having 4 to 5 dogs in my studio all the time. It was not easy. It was very, I worked. That's how I made my booth at Spring Break, the life-size installation. I made all of that with 4 to 5 dogs around me at all times, which was fun. They ate through things sometimes. I had to redo a lot of nail polish. That was, for some reason, something all dogs wanted. Nail polish. Yeah. Part-time jobs. It's the name of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I mean, the art fairs and all of that. I mean, there's all these pivotal moments. Like, is there some moment or a couple of moments or something that like happened that made a big turn in your career that was unexpected? Like one thing that led to another that, I don't know, was a really pivotal moment for you?
Yes. I mean, I think to my first article, the first time someone cared who saw me like as an artist and asked questions to me as if I was an artist. That's how it felt. I was like, oh, I think I'm an artist. Even I was like just the fact that they thought that was very important. And then meeting specific people. I think a lot of pivotal moments tend to be around a certain person I've met or a relationship I formed. And of course, specific art pieces. So that installation definitely changed my life and my practice and my career, but it's going to be a lot of people. And I have to say a lot of women. I've had the privilege of being surrounded by a lot of strong women who've done a lot of great things for me and have helped me greatly. So that's, yes, those are the pivotal people, not as much pivotal moments.
Interesting. Lavaughan, what about you?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, there's a couple moments where, um, one, my mentors, two of my mentors, I guess my friends now, I guess we call each other friends now, or colleagues, which is like really funny because I still see them as teacher-student relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And but we talk as artist to artist now, which is still a little weird because they're where they are and I'm here. But they two of them basically yelled at me when I was working in the bar, and they asked what I was doing for artwork, and I told them I wasn't, that I quit. And they basically scolded me in the bar while I'm working and told me to cut shit and get to work because I owed it to myself and to painting to make work. And I don't think anyone at that point had ever really talked to me about it. It was just kind of a thing that was kind of over. So without those guys, like I wouldn't be back painting. Nona Hershey was one that she helped me, or she submitted me to get a grant. And that grant allowed me to see what I can actually do if I didn't have a job. If I can just put 100% into painting, like that was that moment where it was like, let's put forth the effort, see what comes out of it. Maybe you're never meant to be a painter, maybe you were, but not having the responsibilities or the things to uh, excuses to say why you can't make work.
Yeah.
Like money is a big part of it, and if that part is gone now, you don't have that issue. You can really sit and see what you can do. You don't have to go to work for 8 or 10 hours a day. Those 8 or 10 hours can be in the studio, and that was one of those moments where receiving a grant really showed me what I can do if I didn't have the whatever I'm trying to say. I don't know, but that and then yeah, spring break was definitely the break moment. Was when it like kind of opened up to everyone, and that I felt like I was actually getting ready for something big.
Yeah.
You know.
And I think there was a really nice audience at that art fair. I felt like something that was really exciting from my point of view was just how deeply interested everyone was in learning about the artwork. I know you both were at the fair, I think almost the whole time. They were so interested in learning about you. They were, buying the artwork equally in support of loving the work itself and then supporting you as people. And I think that's something that's newer to the contemporary art world, where in the olden days the artist might have been like kind of behind the curtain, the dealer was doing all of the dealing, and now I think it's just so important for the artists to be there and go to the openings if they can and those kind of things. I think you both are artists that do that. I think Lavaughan, you've flown out to LA and maybe Canada and gone to some openings. Is that something that you would suggest to others to do?
Oh, absolutely. It's working with a gallery or working on your own. You're today you're basically your own brand, and who better markets or represents yourself than you? But you're making those connections and those opportunities for other things in the future to happen. But if you're not there, you kind of miss them. So like, why not do it?
Yeah.
Obviously, if you can do it,
Right.
like I've never been to Montreal. So when the Montreal show happened, I was like, there's no way I'm not going. because it's like you get a show and you get to travel,
Right.
but the connections I made with the people in Montreal, I mean, we still talk, and now some of those people, some people that were at that show came to spring break. They came to the ICA show, and so these relationships that you can build from it by you being there. I don't think most of the things that have happened for me after shows wouldn't happen if I wasn't there, because there's a genuine quality to a person when you get to be face to face, and I sometimes you just don't get that through the work or through some, like we're doing a video today and stuff. There's something different from actually being there, like, and talking to them, but also smelling the paint, because my paintings are always wet. So you get a window of like my studio and what I do every day. So it's like you will never get that through a picture. And so being there is like huge. So everyone that if you're doing work, especially if you have a show, you have to be there. It's like, it's mandatory for yourself.
A lot of my work is about creating situation environments where people are engaging with my models or bodies they wouldn't typically see, or in like moments they wouldn't experience. So I get a thrill out of watching someone watch. I feel like I'm creating not a peeping Tom, because that's not the right word, but a moment where I'm asking the viewer to be excited about what's in front of them and to want to look close and find the details, especially with my sculptures. So when I think back to spring break, I couldn't imagine not being there. The whole point was creating sculpture of me and my boyfriend naked in bed, and then kind of see how and what does it mean to people. So if I wasn't there, that's part of the experience for me to make it, is to see people engage with it and what was interesting to them, and see them giggle when they got close and things like that that are part of the piece. If I had missed it, I would have missed what the piece was about. So I feel the same for my paintings. I like when people look at a girl in her underwear picking food out of her fridge at midnight. Like when's the last time, other than when you do it, that people are looking at you? And I like that there's I see painting in awe, and it's just a midnight snack, and there's humor to it, but it's the reason why. I wouldn't want to miss that. And I don't think that's true for every practice or every art piece, but I think, for me at least, it's very true. I would want to.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think there's just so many connections that happen in person, and they're also random. And I mean, that's what leads to the right place, right time thing. I mean, you never know who's there and whether they talk to you or not. They might see you from a distance and then send you a follow-up email and say, hey, Lavaughan, I was at your opening. I didn't get the chance to talk to you. I'm the curator at the Whitney Museum, and I'd love for you to be in the next. No, that didn't actually happen, but it can happen.
For sure.
Hopefully soon.
Yeah.
And it's totally not impossible. I mean, it's something that's within the realm of possibility. You just never know who's there. I mean, it's not like everyone dresses like a curator or an art critic, and so that's kind of part of the fun of being there, I think.
I had a very memorable moment. It was like the last day. I was so tired. After 4 months of working 15-hour days, I got to relax by spending 8 hours a day at the booth staring, which was actually very rewarding. And the last day, Micheline Thomas came by, and she's a massive inspiration for the piece itself. So it was very overwhelming for me. But then she was pointing out parts of my own work that I hadn't noticed. Like, she was taking pictures and creating a connection. And that was just the most thrilling, not just meeting her, but seeing my work differently through her eyes, because she just approached it with her own. So like, I don't know, that is so important. I mean, I walked away, I saw my work differently after that, in the best of ways.
I'm putting her name in the chat just in case people want to Google her. Lavaughan, you saw Micheline Thomas as well. I remember that was a big moment for you.
It was pretty cool. Yeah. I love her. And intimidating. I was pretty freaked out. So But yeah, moments like that, you don't get if you're at home,
Yeah.
you know. So you have to go out. It's great to see how people see you, your work, you know. And for people to say they don't care is kind of weird. We all care. It matters what people think, you know, and how you use that, then it goes to another place. But it's always awesome to see people get so close to try to touch it. I'm pretty sure some people get away with it,
No.
but to touch the work, you know, you want to get so close, and I mean, I make it that way. You know, it's like I wouldn't do anything to my work that wouldn't. I'm gonna put it wrong, but it's like I make it because that's what I want to do when I see work. You know, when you go to the museum, you can't touch it. I want to touch it.
Yeah.
Just because that guy said don't, or he's standing there with his little suit on and is like, you're too close. And I'm like, I know, I can't help it though. So when we make the work, it's like, I love to see those moments. And it's really awesome to connect with people in that manner. Um, yeah, it's just,
I mean,
it's so many things that yeah.
in some way, like
But
an emerging artist, that's that little moment where you suddenly start becoming like part of the group. I mean, like Mickalene Thomas is a very famous artist who's now familiar with both of your work. I think she started following you on Instagram, maybe. Like, no, you're not best friends, and like maybe she's not talking about you at every dinner party, but if your name got brought up,
yeah.
she would say, oh, I met them and they're a really great artist in person, and that's like a huge endorsement,
Yeah.
just from one contact. So
I feel
Yeah.
like I grew up in Paris, and so I had a very specific experience with art growing up. And then you go to college, and I learn art history, and I feel like you don't. At least I didn't spend much time on contemporary art. I feel like I know a lot about what happened a long time ago. I wasn't really taught what's happening now. So I think there's also something kind of crazy making someone like Mickalene, where I'm like, oh my God, artists are not just all dead men from a long time ago that trained in museums. It's also an actual person and an actual conversation, and she's just someone else who made art and then happens to have gotten where she is now by being very successful, but she's just also a person. So I think meeting her and being at that show and just interacting as an artist and then meeting another artist, I'm like, I guess I could be an artist, question mark.
well, and I think those endorsements are also like, I guess, people on here are probably wondering, like, how do I get into an art fair? Or how do I work with an art gallery? Lavaughan and I, to talk about how we met and started working together, we bumped into each other at the Mass Art Auction, which is a college auction every year. We were friends on Facebook, and he said, oh, you're Abigail Ogilvy. And I said, I am. And then he said, I'm Lavaughan. And, we just started chatting, and it was this brief moment. But from there, we had now seen each other's faces, and he was showing up to an event that his artwork was in. So that's, how we connected. And then it ultimately led to our first show together. But he got many more endorsements from other artists that were recommending him to me. So I think I said, I better show this guy, or, people are going to keep asking me to. No, I mean, obviously very drawn to the work, and have loved working with Lavaughan and getting to know him as a human and an artist. But I think those friends saying, oh yeah, like I know Lavaughan, he's a great artist, and oh no, he's, not working with the gallery right now, or, that's how gallerists kind of do a little bit of their homework, from my point of view. I don't know. I mean, Shona, I know you've worked with some galleries. Like, how have those relationships started?
Instagram, sometimes they see my work online, but also word of mouth. I think it tends to be someone who's been following my practice for some time, who recommended me to someone else, who then looked more into me. I don't, yeah. I also had an unusual experience of it. It was slow, and then it happened very fast for me. The change was within like a couple months. So I went from not having many shows to a couple shows to now I'm where I am now. So I had years of not having any relationship with gallery, having no idea. And just, I mean, spring break again did so much for me. But yeah, word of mouth, I would say that's how my name got around.
Yeah, I would say besides you, Abigail, every other show that I've done has been through uh, Instagram. Every gallery or um, show that I've done, or even smaller shows that aren't in galleries and stuff, people have reached out to me on social media. So that's part of why I show like my work's in process, and I try to put it as much work as possible, because um, all those people are looking, even if they don't specifically know you. Museums and galleries are always on social media. So that's one of those moments where we were saying earlier, like be ready or be prepared for the moment. Um, I'll, they just hit you up, and that's that DM life, which I thought it meant something totally different a long time ago. But now it's like it's all business for the most part, and chatting with people like we were saying in Montreal or um, in Paris. Uh, Things are crazy because I've never been to Paris, but now you have these talks with people that a possible group show or something, which is like crazy, but that's partly because of what they can see immediately on my page. So those things, social media is crazy. I wish I started social media a million years ago.
I,
Like that's the opportunities are unimaginable.
every emerging artist I know, when I say, I mean, I'm sure there must be a couple I'm wrong about, but almost everyone I'm close to, their big moments in their life all happen through Instagram. From some of the biggest galleries out there, literally DMing one of my friends to have a solo show with him, and or friends who had galleries that had never seen their work in person and they just saw them on Instagram. Everyone I know has had a big moment like that because they received a DM one day. I mean, it's I'm sure there are other experiences, but the ones I've experienced of everyone around me is very one to one. They had an Instagram account and then they got a DM one day.
But I mean, I think Instagram is essentially, I think, replaced. I mean, I think people still have websites, but the artists I'm in touch with are often like, oh, don't go to my website. I barely keep it updated. Just look at my Instagram. And honestly, half the time I'd prefer to go to their Instagram because then there's close-up shots, there's videos, I can learn a little bit about their
Yeah.
personality and see if I would like to work with them from maybe some of their stories or things like that. So there's like just so much information being presented that, yeah, I think it's a good place to keep up. If you say something like, I'm not a social media person, I think it's a matter of maybe then coming up with like a weekly plan of posts so that you don't have to think about it too much. But you really, I mean, it's an important part of the practice.
Some of the best advice I've gotten is like treat your Instagram account very much like a profession. I mean, be very professional. I only post my work. I use Facebook to be more casual with friends and family if I want to, but my Instagram is where my work is. I make sure I update it like once a week at least, or every 2 weeks if I'm feeling less confident about my work in that moment. And I make sure the pictures always look good. Like, yeah, if there's things to do, I make sure I talk to other artists who are also on Instagram so they know me. Yeah, I feel like I feel like if an artist isn't on Instagram, they're just a mild shot in the foot. Just a little baby. They're shooting themselves in the foot. Nothing that can't be fixed, but why not just do it, even if it makes you uncomfortable? It makes me uncomfortable. You should see the mild panic attack I have the first minute before posting. I edit the caption 4,000 times. I
For
like text to
sure.
my mother, to my best friend, to my boyfriend, make sure everyone agrees it doesn't sound stupid, and then I post. Sometimes you just got to do it.
Absolutely. And I think, I mean, there is that piece of it that it's like little glimpse into your personality. And I think that's like what's really special about it versus a website. All right, so we're going to put it out there that people can ask a question or two. We're kind of running out of time. I don't want to take up too much of your guys' time, but I'd love to hear while we're asking for questions what you're working on now.
Well, there's that watercolor behind me.
Okay.
I'm working on a new installation, this time with more just women and more of them. I'm quite excited for it. It's for a project next year, and then another larger body of work of paintings. I am shifting a little bit what I'm focusing on. I'm thinking a lot more about multiple women, or what it means for a woman to be with another woman, and what we do when we're just talking and hanging out and existing. So that's kind of the direction I'm going in. Yes.
And I don't know what I'm doing a lot. It's like I just got back into the swing of being in the studio, because I initially I thought I'd be able to go through this downtime and really bang out a ton of new work, and then I kind of got depressed, and so I slowed down the process, or it stopped. And it wasn't until last week, I think, is when I got a little creative bug and started throwing out work. And I think I finished up like 13 paintings last week, because I'm a psychopath. When I start working, I kind of can't turn it off, so I just go, and I'm not sleeping anyway. Right now I'm going to bed at like 6 or 7 in the morning, just because I just can't sleep. So I'm basically, like we just talked earlier, I'm just prepping for that moment again. And all my shows and things that were canceled or postponed this year. When we reboot, I'll have plenty of work that's going to be ready to jump out whenever the moment opens. But and then there's some secret stuff that's happening, but mostly I'm just making work and prepping for when they let me out, and I'll be ready to I don't know, pounce or something. But just sharpening. Like I always compare it to uh, like music. Like I love hip hop. I grew up with it, and it's like never settling for where you are. It's like your lyrics, your bars can always be better. And right now, that's how I feel. I think I'm just sharpening my words right now, and I'm making titles too. So
I saw
I'm
that.
titling my artwork, which I don't do. So there'll be some weird titles coming to the work really soon. You won't really understand them, but they'll basically be trying to get back to the history of myself and my family. So there'll be some weird, funky titles coming too. But yeah, but just prepping, building.
Okay, we're actually getting a bunch of questions in the Q&A, or 3 really good questions. So I don't want to run out of time. I think I want to see if we can answer them. So maybe is a minute or 2 for each question. This person just recently graduated a year ago, getting their MFA and feeling kind of overwhelmed by how much there is out there, but craving some connection or group conversation with other artists and makers. So, I mean, I think besides like just, DMing and things, like how would you recommend making those connections?
Like how to initiate?
Yeah.
I have an easy trick that I always do, which is I look at people's stories and I respond to cute things they do. And it starts a relationship where I've said multiple times how cute their dog is. And then by the time I have a longer sentence, we feel minorly connected. I mean, that really does work. It works with me too. People who've answered back to my stories, even short, friendly things, I always feel that much more bonded to them, especially if they tell me how cute my pets are. They're very cute. So just, I think people are just scared to do it. We tend to take Instagram breaks when we're in between pieces and we want some distraction. So why not answer something? So just have the chutzpah and just send a message and say hi, or respond to a story and be cute, and then build from there. But how to enter an actual community and talk to people and how to have actual conversation, that obviously is a bit harder and that will take more time if you're not actually in New York or going to shows, which is probably the easiest way of meeting people. But take advantage of my little technique I just told you and just respond to stories. Just form minor connections with people. That's how it starts always.
I think we'll leave it at that. And Lavaughan, you can answer the next question. Okay. The central theme of this discussion, it seems to me, is the importance of community in establishing individual success. It's said that we can never pay back the people who have helped us along the way, but we can pay it forward for future generations. In many ways, both of you are creating visual communities, populating spaces with figures, sculpture, and painting. So my question is, do you see yourself creating your own diaristic community through the work, and how are you paying it forward to others? And great discussion.
Well, yes, to all of it. But what I try to do is I'm pretty open on social media, so I'm always available for people, especially younger artists, for advice or whatever. And I use my platform to promote other artists. So I'll post a lot of images of other artists' work on my story, especially artists that I really love and want to support. Um, and my mom is like number one, so she gets 10% of my sales. Anything I make, I give her 10% of, and because I wouldn't really be able to make art if it wasn't for her, because I wouldn't be I wouldn't be here. But I do anything that any young artist ask, I try to do and show support. As from crits or maybe giving them a studio visit or helping them kind of decide where they're trying to go with for their art in terms of galleries and things like that. If whatever you have a question for, I pretty much will answer if you ask, and if I'm not ridiculously busy. But I try to get to all those questions, and I mean, it's important. I mean, we're in a place where I think growing up, or as an artist, not growing up, but growing up as an artist, I didn't really have anyone like me to talk to in that transitional stage, so I'm trying to make sure that I'm available to talk, to be that middle ground for younger artists.
I find that in my community seems to be much more women, less artist-based, but women. I have 74, I think it's 74 or 76% of my followers are women. And they're all 24 to 34 is the average, like much higher than the average, that's what they are. And a lot of my messages are just women talking about experiencing, seeing themselves as an art piece or someone like them. So I feel like my community has been very much women-based in my relationship with women and my models. I feel very connected to the women who I've painted. I have sustained strong relationships with all of them. And we talk with some of them practically daily since I painted them. So that's my community.
Well, I think there's some paying it forward that you do just by continuing your practice. I mean, you never know who you're inspiring,
Sure.
who's felt like you impacted their art and their life through the work you're putting out there, let alone like the actions you take. I had an intern come up to me, a former intern who worked for me in our first year of business back in 2015 at Ulta this year. And she said I knew she was still working at art gallery. She's now in New York. She said she stayed in the art world because I was her first boss that was a gallerist that she thought looked like her. She said everyone else had been like 70 years or older, and she was like, wait a second, I can like really delve into the art world and maybe be under the age of 50. And I had never known that. I just thought she really liked art. Obviously she stayed in the art world probably for many other reasons, but I think you two are two people that I would definitely say you doing your work is what's really inspiring. And I mean, it inspires me, and I'm not an artist, I'm just an artist.
Yeah.
And then, okay, so a question from Janet is, an element of both of your work contains interpersonal relationships and interactions between people. How has being quarantined changed how you're thinking about those interactions? Tough one.
I happen to live a very solitary. I tend to live every day in my studio. I have to say that I don't feel that quarantine has shifted my life much more than I am terrified of the news, and I am more stranger danger, and outside is a bit scarier, but I have to say I'm always, I think my work has led me to this moment. I've been painting women by themselves for the past year, and then suddenly everyone is by themselves at home, and I feel like I've been ready for this. I'm good or bad, but I have been prepared. I mean, I turned the whole first floor of my house into my studio way before this even happened. So but I, you know, that happens to be, my work is about solitude and what it means to be alone, especially as a woman. We don't get a lot of time to reflect on that. So I feel very perfect for this time.
Yeah, I guess I'm pretty similar, because I don't socialize a ton, because I'm always busy in the studio making work. But I just did an interview about this question, and what one thing that's happened is that it's me started out a communal aspect in my work, and maybe figuring out a way to do some type of groupings and kind of reflect on the social distancing thing, because it's made me miss people. I think before I would love to see you, but it wasn't top of my list to go and see you, as friends and connecting with family and things like that. And now I talk a lot more on the phone, and I end up telling people I miss them a lot lately, which I don't think I think it before. Now I actually say it. So it's been a weird moment to that I'm needing a connection. So I think in the future, some of the works will probably be engaging and speaking on that. There will be a lot of connection and things happening for the work with each other.
All right. So you guys are both kind of loners in a way.
Not true for
I have so many friends.
Yeah, you have all your figures and
They're all hanging out with me. They're always here.
all your paintings. And then answer in just one answer so that we don't keep people too long. Do you remember a piece of art you saw that changed you or gave you permission to pursue something in your own work?
I have one. I'm trying to make sure I get the title right because I only know it's the model that was used. It's Lucian's Freud painting of Sue Tilley. Sergeant, I forgot the name of it. But I saw it when I was an undergrad, and I happened to have gone with two of my favorite professors who happened to be in Paris. I was there over the summer, and they took me to the Pompidou, and it was the first incredibly large woman who was painted. And Lucian Freud, who is someone I think about often. I mean, it was just a very exciting moment and very confusing. And as I am plus size, it was very hard for me to look at another plus size body and not be immediately angered at that moment. That's what I felt for myself. So so it was a very life-changing moment. And then to be with two of my favorite professors who were talking about it so beautifully. I think all that came together to, multiple years later, I'm painting paintings that are, thinking of that exact painting, of what it meant to be a big, beautiful woman, which is what that painting was. At least it was to me as a viewer. So yes, that painting, that moment will never ever leave my mind.
Yeah, for me, it's so many. I think just because I never really looked at art until I went to art school. And but there was a Manet painting, the Maximilian, that really sketchy painted painting. When I saw that painting, it made me start the process of thinking about seeing a painting in the third dimension and wanting to take a walk through it. So I wanted to look under those brims of those hats, of those shooters, and I could smell that gun smoke. And I wanted to get closer and really with it, you know, and that painting made me really want to paint. And that was the first time, besides Goya, everyone knows how much I love Goya, but that Manet painting was, I was like, that's painting. I got to paint like that. Even though I don't paint like that, I need it, you know, the idea behind it. And then obviously anything that Kerry James Marshall makes. He made me realize that I can paint Black figures, which is huge. So, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
That's
I think for both of you, those are really pivotal pieces of artwork for sure.
This is the painting. It's Benefit Supervisor Sleeping. Sorry, I just didn't have the title of the painting and I felt embarrassed. I'm back.
All right, well, those are all the questions. Lavaughan and Shona, you've been awesome. Everyone is typing in that they loved this, that this is amazing. Artwork is beautiful. So I've already seen some emails come through asking me for more information on both of you. So I'll forward along those emails. But and thank you to everyone who joined us today. We loved having you.
Thank you.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys. Bye.
Thanks. It's awesome. Bye, guys.